The Joe Jonas Sophie Turner divorce case is one of the most interesting jurisdictional cases I have ever seen. So here is what has happened. He, of course, filed for divorce in Florida. She then filed in New York under the Hague Convention, under federal law, to have the children be released or returned back home to England. So we've got a bunch of competing jurisdictional things going on. Let's talk about it. My name is Billy Tarasio. I'm in Arizona, divorce attorney. I own Modern Law and have worked on cases involving the Hague Convention. And every day, all day, we as family law attorneys deal with jurisdictional issues. So here's what you need to know. In the United States, every single state has adopted the UCCJEA. That says that only one state has jurisdiction over custody at any given time. That is to avoid people fighting or forum shopping for different custody laws. The general rule is that the home state of the children has jurisdiction for any custody proceedings. And the home state is one where the children have lived for the last 6 months. The Hague Convention is an international treaty to prevent international child abduction. So if I take my children and run away before a divorce is filed or in the middle of a divorce to another country and they are members of the Hague Convention, that international treaty says that the children will be returned to their state of habitual residence. In this particular case, Joe Jonas files for divorce in Miami. Now, the kids had not lived in Miami for the previous 6 months prior to his filing, but the parties had owned a home in Miami that they had sold. In May, the couple and their children had moved to England, lived in England, established doctors and a nursery, which might mean preschool, in England, and signed a contract to purchase a home that was supposed to close and be ready for them to move into in December. In the meantime, of course, things fell apart. So where did they live? They lived all over the place. The other thing about the UCCJEA is even if you all lived in one place for 6 months, if nobody lives there anymore, then that state loses jurisdiction. So Sophie could certainly argue that Florida doesn't have jurisdiction because nobody lived in Florida, but it's just unclear where they did live because they were bouncing all over the world. And what happened was they moved to England. They intended to live in England. They entered into a contract to buy a home in England. And then Sophie was working on a movie. And because she was working on a movie and Joe was going on tour, they decided that the kids would go with Joe and a nanny on tour. And that's what they've been doing. Sophie finished up filming and was coming back to the United States to pick up her kids, take them back to England. In the meantime, he filed for divorce. She allegedly found out about it through the media. And when she came to the United States to retrieve her children, Joe refused to give her the passports. She then filed to have jurisdiction moved or have the children released to England. So what happens now? Well, it's incredibly complicated and not clear. As far as I can tell, no one has filed a motion to dismiss in Florida, which is something that I might do if I were hired by Sophie, and if I were a Florida lawyer, I might file a motion to dismiss, because if the state doesn't have jurisdiction, and if the state determines they don't have jurisdiction, they cannot hear the case, and any rulings they make are void. And it's not like an objective, you can't take jurisdiction if you want it, you either have it or you don't, and it's completely a legal question. So I'm a little surprised that legal battle isn't going on in Florida right now. And of course, the analysis of what is a habitual residence for purposes of the Hague Convention is a different analysis from the UCCJEA analysis. So it could be that a federal court decides that England was the place of habitual residence for these children, and then it goes to England and it doesn't really matter. The thing that's a little ridiculous about this case is that these parents need to figure out how to work together. Their people need to figure out how to work together and come up with something that's going to work for them. Now, this is what they did when they were married. They have complicated lives, but they have a lot of resources, and they have 2 little girls, 3 and 1. So during their married lives, they worked together to figure out when the kids would be in each place. Jonas has said he wants shared custody. That means if Sophie lives in England, they're going to spend some time in England. These are the hardest cases because one of these parents, if Joe lives in the United States and Sophie lives in England, then one of these parents is going to end up being the primary custodial parent. The children are going to have to go to school in some place, unless they have a completely alternative lifestyle and they end up just having nannies and taking their kids on the road with them and going to different shows, and then they're going to live like that. But regardless of whether or not their marriage is breaking up, they're still parents to these 2 little girls and kind of need to be working together because they can spend an unlimited amount of money fighting about these things. But it's not going to get them any closer to what is our real life solution to the fact that we are 2 parents who are divorcing, who live in different parts of the world. So that's my 2 cents.